What's going on, guys? So let's move up to the midweight category of the new M3 Pro 14-inch and a used M2 Pro 14-inch. Now, if you clicked on this video and wondering who it's for people who are more value-centric. If you don't necessarily need all the power of the latest and greatest, it might be better to cut back and get a used and cheaper model at the same price. I just gave away the conclusion at the beginning of the video. I guess that's why the sponsor for today's video is nobody. Keep in mind, I'm a person coming from an M1 Air, so both these machines are a huge improvement from what I currently use. Keep that in mind till the end of the video. The biggest change this year is the color. Space black. Just kidding. It's not the biggest change, but it is a change. The color is nice, I will admit. I wouldn't classify this as space black, just a space gray 2.0 or like a special edition color. Overall, I do like how the color, kind of changes in light and dark scenarios, but don't go into this thinking that it's space black because it's not that black. All right, let me touch on price real quick because price is pretty important, one of the reasons why you're watching this video. So Apple products rarely go on sale across all retailers, and the holiday season is one of the very few times of the year that Apple products go on sale. However, I will be comparing retail price. It's easier for people outside the US to follow the comparison in that fashion, and also when you watch this video when it's not holiday season, it's going to be easier to do the comparison between retail price. But I will also factor in sales price at the end. Anyway, the used M2 Pro can be picked up for around $1,600, and the new M3 Pro 14-inch retails for around $2,000. So everything about these two laptops are essentially the same. We have ProMotion, so things look a lot smoother on both machines. They both get exceptionally bright thanks to their mini LED backlighting. Now, the M3 Pro does get brighter by 100 nits in just regular SDR content, but honestly, I wouldn't say it's that big of a difference. The ports are exactly the same. It comes with the MagSafe that's capable of fast charging, 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports, a headphone jack, another Thunderbolt 4 port, SD card slot, and an HDMI port. Now, when it comes to the camera and microphone, they both look the same to me, maybe slightly better on the M3 Pro, but the M2 Pro, or I should say both machines, have a 1080p webcam with the same processing, and the microphones look and sound just the same. Do microphones have a look? I think they just sound the same. Anyway, take a listen. So this is a microphone and camera test on the M2 Pro 14-inch. You guys let me know how it looks and sounds. Just like from my previous video, once you shrink it down, it's going to look pretty good. But overall, I'd say if you have good lighting with the help of the 1080p webcam and the AI technologies that Apple's using, I'd say that the camera quality is pretty good, especially on a laptop that came out earlier this year. All right, so this is the microphone and camera test on the M3 Pro 14-inch, the one that starts at $2,000. And I would say that the laptops, at least compared to the M2 Pro, this one looks a little bit softer, but I'd say there's more color, like more richness to it. You guys can look at the comparison yourself back to back, but in terms of the microphone, I'm gonna assume they sound exactly the same. But in terms of picture quality, video quality, this one just looks a little bit more in terms of the color. The other one looks washed out, but they're both pretty good, to be honest. Now, if we move over to speakers, I don't have a proper sound analysis system. I just have my eardrums that have been blown out listening to music in the car, but to my ears, they sound identical. If you're looking for a difference, you could say that the speakers are a bit more refined on the M3 Pro model, but unless you have them side by side, you probably wouldn't be able to tell a difference. Take a listen. So the usual laptop comparisons, the build quality, trackpad, keyboard, all identical. So then what's the difference between these two laptops? Hitting that subscribe button because my segues are cringe. But no, seriously, it's performance. And Apple seems to have downplayed the M3 Pro machine, but at the same time they didn't because M2 Pro is actually a really good CPU. Let's go over the specs real quick. So the M2 Pro has 10 CPU cores, has 6 performance cores, 4 efficiency cores. The M3 Pro, on the other hand, has 11 CPU cores, 5 performance cores, and 6 efficiency cores. They both can be configured with 12 CPU cores, but for this video, we will be comparing the base models. They both have 16 gigabytes of RAM. Actually, that's not true. The M2 Pro has 16 gigabytes of RAM, but the M3 Pro has 18 gigabytes of RAM, and they both have 512 gigabytes of storage. But the most talked about thing is the performance difference. How much will having one less performance core have compared to the previous generation? We also have less GPU cores as well. I don't know why I gave you guys a thumbs up, but there's less GPU cores on the M3 Pro, 14 versus 16. But through my testing and benchmarking, the M3 Pro is pretty comparable to M2 in most CPU tasks, especially when it comes to video editing. Rendering times were exactly the same, just like the regular M3 laptop. The only thing I really noticed was when it came to GPU testing. So Blender task, and I guess the new dynamic caching that Apple has, really gave improvement to the GPU side of things, and the M3 Pro absolutely smashes the M2 Pro. All right, so I'm doing this Blender render live so you guys can see how fast this M3 Pro is when it comes to GPU related things. And I'm actually going to start this M2 Pro one first. So they're off to the races. I apologize if I mess up when I speak. It's just, I have a hard time speaking, but let's start off and we can see in terms of the timing that it says that the remaining is about 50 seconds. This one, the remaining is about a minute and a half. This machine is no slouch. Like, in all seriousness, I am just shocked at how fast this computer is. And when the Blender renders files are bigger, the gap just starts to become more and more apparent. Now, when it comes to CPU related things, the M2 Pro I think is a fantastic machine, but whenever you're doing anything GPU related, I would say the M3 Pro without a doubt is the better machine. So we still have a minute remaining on M2 Pro, 10 seconds left on the M3 Pro. Also hope I'm not messing up any of the numbering here, but you can see here that it's going to render another image, and just like that, boom, that was like perfect timing, but terrible snap. 58 seconds. The M2 Pro is still rendering the base image. So like I said before, if you do anything GPU related, I'm not like a GPU expert by any means, but whatever Apple's doing with the dynamic caching on the M3 Pro, and I would say that additional 2 gigs of RAM is potentially helping as well, since the RAM is shared between both the CPU and GPU, but dynamic caching really just makes the M3 Pro a better machine when it comes to GPU task. So now the M2 Pro has finished at a minute 35, and then you can see it's a 30-second difference. Whenever the files are bigger, trust me, the difference is just night and day. I've said this before, but I'm gonna stop right here. GPU related things, go for the M3. CPU, go for M2. Now, I have been told to do audio testing. I don't have any audio background, but if you guys give me the steps or some files, I can include them in future testing. But overall, if you're doing anything outside of GPU-bound task, I actually recommend the used M2 Pro. However, if I were to put an asterisk at the top, either here, or both places, the most noticeable difference was battery life. So since we have generally the same performance with less performance cores, you get more battery life. And in my long-term battery test, the M3 Pro lasted an extra hour and a half. And to me, I think that's more important than just performance. So then who is this for? So going back to my opening statement in the video, if you are a value-centric person or someone who just wants to get the most for their money, you intentionally looked for this video, and I'm here to tell you that the M2 Pro is probably what you're looking for if you're looking for this within your budget or your price range. It's not worth it to go for the M3 Pro at $2,000 or even at a discount unless it's $200 cheaper, especially if you aren't doing anything GPU related. Now, if you're on Intel, you probably only buy new, I'm assuming, and that's the reason why you're still on one, because you just want to get the most out of your machine. And if you only buy new, well, the M3 Pro is going to be a massive upgrade for you, and I'd actually sway you towards the cheaper base model MacBook Pro if you want something brand new. I still think it's a little bit overkill, so if you still want to not completely break your budget or you don't need all this power, I'd actually say going over to the M2 is also just a massive improvement on the Air side of things. Just make sure you snag one with a minimum of 16 gigabytes of RAM. I would recommend the M1, but if you are shopping in this price category, the extra benefits of the M2 Air versus the M1 Air are worth it in my opinion. M1 Pro is too close in price to a used M2 Pro 14-inch, and those are also starting to dry up in the used market as well, and it's mainly just M2 Pro at this point. Apple has been coming out with solid laptops, and the M3 Pro is a great machine, but the M2 Pro, it was already a great machine. If I were in the situation, I'm more in line to things that are CPU bound, so I'd rather just save that money and get a used M2 Pro. I'm on M1, so I don't really need anything too crazy, and I'd say that this is at least, this might sound kind of egotistical, but I'd say this is a pretty grounded review. If you want to cross-check with other YouTubers that do more in-depth comparisons, that's public information for you guys to check out, but I don't want to overcomplicate it for you guys. So there you have it. The M2 Pro has stood the test of time, even though I think it released this year, right? We can give credit to Apple in that there are improvements to the M3 Pro. It is there, but is it worth it? To the commoner, not really. To professionals, get the latest, especially if it's your livelihood. All right, guys, appreciate every single sub, like, and comment. And as always, guys, much love. What can I say? M2 Pro, it's just too good. Space Black, though. Nah. Space Gray 2.0. All right, let's move up to the midweight category of the new 13-inch to 14-inch.
All right, so I actually want to do this Blender render live just so I can show you guys how fast this M3 Pro is. So I just realized that I don't have fingers that are long enough for this. So, all right, so I'm going to do this Blender render live, and this is something I've never done before, but that's just...
So the biggest change this year is the color, surprisingly, and that is the space black color. If you think it looks amazing, it's personal preference. The displays are basically identical. We have that 120 hertz refresh rate due to the ProMotion. Well, it's ProMotion. Anyway, you guys get what I'm talking about. So the usual categories, build quality, trackpad, keyboard, all identical. So what's the difference between these two laptops? Hitting that subscribe button because my segues are cringe. I don't think it's worth it to get the M3 Pro at $2,000 or even at a discount price unless it's $200 at a discount. So this would be $1,800. But even then, I'd probably still argue that this is still a better buy.